the EU targets Meta, breach notices from Ticketmaster, and tax rules for crypto. This is MacVoices. This edition of MacVoices is supported by the new MacVoices Discord, available to all of our MacVoices patrons. Sign up and join in the conversation in your new favorite online group at patreon.com/MacVoices. I'm going to use that as a little bit of a segue because of one of the next articles that Meta has now dropped into the gun sights of the EU tech enforcers, and saying that their pay or consent model is a breach of EU's tech rules. And I don't know, mark this down. I'm not a huge fan of Meta, but I feel like this is another time that the regulators, and this harks back to our discussion last week about, Apple saying, well, we want kind of, I'm paraphrasing, of course, but they want a little more definition before they say they're taking Apple Intelligence to the EU. And here's Meta. Meta has dropped out a specific model that they thought would meet with the EU's approval, and the EU is saying no. And oh, by the way, we think the fine could be up to 10% of your global revenue.
Yeah.
I think.
At what point do they just say, screw it, we're just not going to sell in the EU?
Well, Guy, not just that, but I keep looking and saying, when is the whole tech industry going to say to the EU, look, you're overdoing this. I mean, these global fines, you want to argue with us and you want to put in restrictions, that's one thing. But to start looking for global level fines when you're not a global audience, I don't know, man. It just rubs me the wrong way.
Chuck, I have thoughts.
Please, and then I don't know if everybody else is just thinking things and not saying it, but I want to get everybody else in. Please, Jeff, go right ahead.
Okay, I think that Meta read all the same legal documents that all the other companies did, and they thought, yeah, I think we can get away with this. And it turns out they can't. My take is that what Meta's doing actually does run afoul of the EU regulations, and that being that to not have to accept the tracking and everything else that goes along with the Meta account, that you have to pay for that. That's not what the EU laws are saying. So yeah, that's in this case. Yes, Meta, I think, as someone who has played a lawyer on stage, so I'm clearly qualified. I think that's what's getting them in trouble here. Now, as far as the punitive repercussions of not following the guidelines, whether it's the letter of the law or the spirit of the law, whatever. I think that this is ultimately going to be a situation where the EU does the F around and find out thing. And there will be a lot of companies that, at least some companies, that say, the game you're playing, too expensive. We're done. We're out. And we're already we're starting to see a taste of that with Apple saying, hey, these features, we're not bringing them to the EU. And then the EU saying, not what we meant. Now you've got another problem. And
give us more money.
Yeah. But I think we're going to see more companies following that path and saying, we're just not bringing this product or these features into the EU because it's just not worth playing that game.
Marty?
First of all, I don't know how you can look at this article and ignore that freaky picture of Mark Zuckerberg in it. It just creeps me out.
I do need therapy after that one.
Yeah, it's just too weird. I've got to ask, how well were these plans of the EU put together, because it seems like they're just running into a lot of conflict, and it could create some large losses for them or for people who live in the EU if companies decide to say, we're not going to be supporting these regulations, and we're just not going to provide this product or service within the EU because of the EU regulations.
Eric?
I I think to some extent, would anybody pay attention to the EU if their fines were proportional to the audience of the EU? Maybe the thought is they needed to make it worldwide to actually make the companies pay any attention at all and not just ignore it or pay the fine and not comply with anything.
I think the problem there is a lot of these regulations, number one, seem to be counterproductive to one another, and that it's being written for politicians by insiders that are looking for the best way to benefit monetarily the EU. So if they start going after companies' global profits, then I think that what Jeff was saying is correct, that a lot of companies will just say, you know what, we give up. We're going to just continue to sell in the UK, and we'll sell in the Middle East, and we'll sell in Africa, and we'll sell in the Far East, and we'll sell in the US. But you guys can go take a flying jump at yourself.
Guy, it's a point I made last week that it feels like somebody's looking out and saying, we need cash and we know how to get it. We're going
go after American companies.
Well, go after the companies, the ones at the top of the heap, so.
Well, and for the most part, those are American companies. Microsoft, yeah. Apple, Google, Meta.
And that was a point.
Samsung is Korean, but is anybody going after Samsung for any of this stuff? Or since they use Android as their backbone for all of their phones, are they just pointing the finger back at Google?
I don't know. This was on another podcast, and I'm sorry I can't give credit where credit's due, but the point was made that you look at the biggest tech companies, and you're right, they're American companies, or they're Chinese companies, or they're South Korean companies. There are no huge tech companies in the EU, and you have to wonder, okay, what is it about the culture there that maybe is not allowing them to develop? And does it have anything to do with this? Go back the whole way to the Apple Store, that whole controversy and the need for third-party app stores. And it's like, at some point, Apple built the App Store as part of their ecosystem, and yet they were forced to open it up to let somebody else in. I can't believe I'm finding myself defending Microsoft, but Microsoft, wherever they got Teams, they were trying to integrate it. That was a no-no. Now Facebook is faced with, you either pay to use Facebook, or you give us your data to use Facebook. Now that, in my mind, that presumes that if I pay them to use it, that they're not going to be collecting my data. I'm not sure I really believe that. I'm sorry, but based on past performance, I'm not sure I believe that. But that's a bit more of a reasonable business model. And, X is doing the same thing. I got it right that time. X is doing sort of the same thing because they're only giving certain features to paid users. Now, that's not just flat out access to the platform versus no access, but it still feels like it's in the same ballpark. And yet here's the EU coming in and saying, yeah, well, you could be facing a 10% of your global revenue fine.
Hey, Chuck.
Yeah, Jeff.
Because I'm always looking stuff up. You said something that made me think, is that true? And what you said was there aren't any big tech companies in the EU. And so I thought, well, what tech companies are in the EU? So I did a quick look. Here are the top 3 tech companies in the EU: Siemens, Accenture, and SAP. fracking huge global companies. There's also Ericsson, Atos, and then it goes into companies where I have difficulty pronouncing the names and don't know personally. But based on what I'm seeing, there are plenty of really big tech companies in the EU. So yeah, just bringing that up so that we're all aware.
Okay, so what are the top three again, Jeff? SAP.
SAP.
Accenture and Siemens.
Do any of those make any significant hardware products?
Siemens does, but I think Accenture and SAP are all SaaS companies, or both SaaS companies.
Yeah,
like exclusively SaaS. I mean,
yeah. Okay. So there are some, but they're not.
And keep in mind, Meta is not a hardware company.
True. Web.
I was just going to say, but of those three, how many of them are truly consumer facing? Ericsson is really more of a more industrial. Yeah, they have a consumer phone line, but they're really more of an industrial powerhouse.
Does Siemens have a big public facing site anymore? I'm asking because I honestly don't know.
I don't know. It's
aren't they like huge in global shipping?
If they are,
is that a joke? Or are you serious?
No, I was serious.
The awesome thing is with you, Guy, it could have gone either way.
Yeah, it could have.
I do know that they had a consumer electronics division because I had a Siemens cordless phone, not a cell phone, but home phone, and SAP is like a software developer. They're huge. They're kind of the the Oracle of Europe, if you will, kind of in that space. But I don't think they're consumer facing. I think one thing that's going on with the ones that we're talking about, the Apple or the Facebooks or the Metas or whatever, they're all consumer facing, and those are the ones that I think the EU wants to go after because they have the most popularity. If they go out and say that we're going after Ericsson, okay,
how about Logitech?
But you're going after Apple,
Mm-hmm. Philips and Logitech are both European companies. I forgot about Philips because they don't have hardly any products in the US anymore. But Logitech.
Is Logitech that large? I mean, when we're talking about
it's one of the top 15 largest electronic companies in Europe. There's also ASML, but that's another SaaS company.
I thought they made underwear. Sorry.
Well, Jeff
they
wouldn't know anything
sassy
about
underwear.
All right. Let's before we
actually
get
it's
underpants.
underpants. They make not underwear. It's
underpants. Excuse me.
Pants.
Thanks.
One of Chuck's favorite brands.
Chuck, you're welcome. Glad I did it.
Yeah.
Sassy
really.
pants. Sassy pants. What Chuck wears when he wants to dance. It's sassy pants.
Oh boy. Webb, this is on you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm still amazed that
what I do for a cheap
allowed
joke
on live shows.
Oh gosh. Following up on something we talked about last week, the Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster is notifying customers that their personal data may have been exposed after a widely reported hack. Now, why is this here? It's because I saw this on a music website called Louder Sound. I have not seen it in any of my main tech news feeds. I have not received a notification from Ticketmaster. Has anybody?
I used Ticketmaster yesterday.
Yeah. Has anybody received a notification from Ticketmaster?
Yeah, I did. I can't remember the last time I used Ticketmaster. It's probably 6-7 years ago from what I can recall. But I did get a notification. They told me all the things that I could do. to make it right. But yeah.
Okay, so that's one out of what do we have here? 7 people.
Probably the only reason I noticed it was because we had been talking about it. And then I got an email from Ticketmaster. Otherwise, it would have been filtered into junk and it would have been bye-bye.
So Brian says, yes, he got a notice weeks after the fact. And Ben just says he just did today. So maybe it's just rolling off. But I thought it was very interesting that a music website was focused on this and that the tech press was not, given that it involved a hacking situation. Have we become that sensitized or desensitized to it that it's just
Pretty
not even
much
worth a headline anymore?
This is why for most sites, I no longer do credit cards. I'll do PayPal, or I'll use some other third-party payment system to pay these other companies whatever it is that I promised to pay them. And I'm just not going to give them my credit cards, not anymore, and hope that PayPal doesn't get hacked again.
Eric, you said that someone you talked to yesterday was contacted?
Yeah, they hadn't used Ticketmaster in years. But same thing, hey, we'll help you sign up for monitoring. So maybe they're going back in time and taking the first group.
Or the people less likely to keep using the service.
Yeah, right. I haven't used Ticketmaster in years either, and I didn't get anything.
What?
There's another aspect to this in Ticketmaster, at least where I am at. I mentioned to you, Chuck, when we were chatting last night, that I was at the one of the Copa America soccer games where the United States got beat by Uruguay, I think was the opponent. But we used Ticketmaster for electronic ticketing to get into the stadium. Okay. So it wasn't so much that I purchased tickets, but because my company did that. But I think there's another aspect to this besides just the credit card transactions that the e-ticketing to get into stadiums. And where the soccer game was at Arrowhead Stadium, where the Chiefs play their football games, or home field for the Chiefs. And then there's another venue here in town, the indoor arena for a lot of concerts and stuff, and that's an AXS ticketing platform. Same thing. No, I kind of like the Ticketmaster because it goes right into my Apple Wallet for ticketing and all that. So, but I think there's another aspect to this that it is equally as dangerous for this aspect of all these professional sports teams want to get away from cash sales. They don't want to have cash in the stadiums, and they want everything electronic, including entry into the stadium. Then once you're in there, you can only do electronic transactions when you get in there, and still it can be very dangerous. So.
Yeah. I'm going to give Ben Rathig the last word on this in the chat room, because he said that he's surprised that he didn't get a $25 convenience fee for the email. Well played, Ben. Well played. Well played.
That's awesome.
Well done, Ben. Well done.
This one caught my eye. The US Treasury finalizes tax rules for crypto. So the party's over, folks. You're going to have to start accounting for your crypto profits. And
okay.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, done.
Well, it feels like this takes, in some ways, this legitimizes crypto a bit more, because you're paying taxes on it, so I guess it's legitimate, right? But it takes away that Wild West feel. And I don't know if this will aid in any of the criminal crackdowns on some of the lesser cryptocurrencies. I just felt it was noteworthy. So it's one of those, maybe stay tuned. We'll see what happens. but it is coming. So be aware.
Do I get to post my losses with it too? From those folks that had convinced me their uncle was really knows cryptocurrency, and
I would say, contact the IRS.
Yeah,
Marty,
try it.
Hope
Let
springs
us know how
eternal.
that goes.
Yeah.
I was talking to
Stops right there.
I was talking to a gentleman that I've mentioned here before. His name's Tom Honig. He was used to be on the Board of Governors for the Fed, and then was the head of the FDIC for a while, and lives here in Kansas City, and I can call him by his first name. Anyway, he and I had a conversation about cryptocurrency, and he made it analogous to monopoly money. It's just, there's not a whole lot to it, and if you got in early, you're fine. But if you try to get into it now, it's just, he wasn't a fan. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, my feeling on crypto is that it's much like the gold rush and silver rush in Colorado and California in the 1800s. The people that make money off of this are not the people that are out hunting for it. It's the people that are selling them the services related to it.
Yeah.
And Webb, I appreciate what your friend said, and I kind of agree with it, but at the same time, if you are able to make a profit in crypto and then turn it into dollars, it's still real dollars. I mean, maybe how it got to real dollars was a little bit strange, but if you could cash it out, it's
evidently earlier tonight I made money on Apple stock too. So,
well, yeah. See, there you go. Yeah. So, but it almost feels like a little bit like poker chips. The poker chips themselves aren't really worth anything until I take them to the cage, and then they turn into real dollars, and it's like, okay, I won, $2,000. Great.
Yeah, someone else's money that they paid for those chips is now your money.
Right. So same thing with crypto. Now we could take this in another direction and go to NFTs, but let's not do that. That could just go very wrong.
There's not much of a difference.
Yeah, well, that feels like just out of thin air, Jeff.
Just remember who made money on that? The house. The house made money on it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
The house always makes the money.
Yeah. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.